This week on episode 295 of the Cinema Psycho Show, we're keeping the holiday vibe alive as we review the modern holiday classic, Elf, from 2003.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Connington, joined my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
Brian, I don't even know why you want to record with me. I'm nothing but a cotton-headed ninny muggins.
I was wondering how fast it was going to take before cotton-headed ninny muggins was mentioned, but you got like, what, 30 seconds in?
Less, maybe 10.
Less,
Yeah.
maybe 10. Maybe 10. We're on episode 295. 295, and coming off the heels of what was one of the worst viewing experiences, I think, that John and I had.
One of the worst Christmas
last week.
specials. And my air quotes are for our video watchers. Yeah.
Specials.
Yeah.
Yeah, but coming off of the heels of Saving Christmas, the abomination from Kirk Cameron, I thought that we should chase it. Just like, most people do during the holidays, you do some drinking, with a good time, good feeling, legit holiday classic. And that is, of course, 2003's Elf. I'm kind of surprised, John, that we haven't talked about this one in since 2016. Like, I'm surprised that this is the first time we're talking about it. Maybe it's because we're assholes and we're like, can we do a review of a movie that literally is very lighthearted and has become a Christmas classic?
Well, see, normally around the holidays, we review things like I Wish You a Turtle's Christmas or The Christmas Tree.
True.
But yeah, so this is...
Rhapsody's Believe in Santa.
Yeah. Rhapsody Kids Believe in Santa.
Rhapsody Kids Believe in Santa.
Yeah, this is our lemon chaser to Kirk Cameron.
That's exactly it.
But, it's funny, Brian, you presented this as us doing this episode, and I'm like, oh, crap, I wore basically the Buddy the Elf shirt last episode. So I'm like, damn, I could have saved it.
Yeah, you kind of did.
But
you kind of did.
I came to this movie late because it came out in 2003. I was a junior in high school and kind of a twa. But also, but even more than just being a twa, I didn't think the movie was for me. It seemed like it was a movie intended solely for 8-year-olds. I didn't realize that it had kind of every age appeal. I missed it. And Brian, when we met in grad school, I still hadn't seen this movie. I think it was that Christmas of our first year in grad school that I watched it. So
I think we watched it. I forget where we watched it at. It might have been in the carriage house. That's kind of where we tended to watch things. Like, that's where we watched Scott Pilgrim. And you guys all said, like, this movie's terrible.
And then you all, every one of you went, get out.
You guys suck.
Get out. Yeah.
Yeah. But
change your major.
Before we jump into Elf, I do want to just make a note here. Because we never do this. We never just say this at the beginning. Please, if you would be so kind, if you're listening to our podcast and you've listened to it for a while, or maybe you caught a couple episodes or something like that, do me a favor. Hit that follow button on your podcast app of choice, if you're on Apple, Spotify, or whatever. And if you're on YouTube, click the subscribe and the like and the notification bell. We're trying to do a lot of video now with our episodes. It's been a long time coming. And, I personally want to be putting out content that you guys all want. Part of that is just, give us the follows, give us the likes and all that fun stuff. And on top of that, if you could, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Those things are great. I like to hear how we're doing. And absolutely, if there's a movie that maybe you want us to cover, let us know. We might cover it.
Yeah. And send us like money and presents and stuff too.
Money and presents and stuff are always appreciated. I'm always open for bribery. But with that little aside, I honestly, when this movie came out, when Elf came out in 2003, I just kind of like you, John, like I wasn't 100% paying attention to it. Like, it was definitely there, and I remember seeing advertisements for it, but my brain wasn't there. And I don't know if it was just because it wasn't targeted towards me, but and I think also, like, at the time, Will Ferrell was the old school guy. He was Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
So, like, I see Elf and I'm like, what's this? So I didn't get into it until I would say probably college, not grad school, but like in college. It was one of those things because I was an RA in college. So I was the asshole you probably didn't like. You're like, fuck that RA. So,
oh no, it's Connington. Don't let him smell
Yeah.
your breath. Yeah.
I mean, whatever. I could do a whole. I honestly, like, our podcast isn't about my experience as an RA, but I could do probably a good couple episodes on that. There's so many stories. But my point is like, that was a movie that I saw for the first time during RA training, going in from the springs. I think it was going from the winter semester into the spring. So like, we had to go back a little early, and that was a movie that played. So like, that was kind of my first experience of Elf. And I personally I'll let the cat out of the bag. I love this movie. I think it really is a holiday classic. It's not perfect. I'm not going to be one of those guys who says like, oh yes, Elf is the perfect Christmas movie. And perfect movie. It's not. not by a stretch.
I mean,
It's pretty damn good.
it's pretty close to being a perfect Christmas movie, I would say.
A perfect Christmas movie with some flaws. Not a lot.
Sure.
But
Yeah, what movie
some flaws. What movie doesn't? But I'd say it's a perfect modern Christmas classic. Because obviously you'll have people who go like, Christmas Story and It's a Wonderful Life, and those ones, they'll always point to those, and even Scrooge, the various Ebenezer Scrooge movies that have been coming out since the 20s.
The best
So,
one's
like,
the Muppets.
Yeah, the Muppets one.
Hands
So
down.
like, everyone kind of points to those. I think this is the perfect modern Christmas movie.
And Brett, that's something that's very interesting to point out, is that a modern Christmas movie classic is not something that's really said. Like, around this time of year, it's, Frosty and Rudolph and the Grinch, all, 40, 50 years old. And the more like quote unquote modern ones, Scrooge, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Christmas Story, those are all the 80s. Like, I'm sure if I went on IMDb and looked up Christmas movies by the year, I'm sure that there are maybe others, but off the top of my head, I can't think of, not that there haven't been movies, but like Office Christmas Party and, The Night Before with Seth Rogen are not destined to become Christmas classics, but this is, this and like Love Actually. And I'm talking movies that are now, 20 and 22 years old. But those are our modern Christmas classics. And say what you want about Love Actually, because there's a lot to be said. But
Yeah, there's a lot to be said. I mean, I'm not entirely sure why the 90s were kind of devoid of the Christmas classic. I mean, you have some like Jack Frost, and I'm not talking about the
Rapey Santa or
the
Rapey
rapey Santa. No, not
Snowman,
Santa.
Snowman. Yeah.
Rapey Snowman. I'm not talking about that one, but I'm talking about like the Michael Keaton Snowman one, which is equally creepy. I'm sorry, it is. But like the 90s really didn't have a ton of these. Like maybe Jingle All the Way.
It's the Santa
might
Claus.
be the closest. Oh well, yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, that one is I think the 90s Christmas classic.
And I think Jingle All the Way is only super famous because it's so bad. Like, hey, let's get real high and watch Jingle All the Way. I don't know anybody that like goes, let's put on Jingle All the Way while we make Christmas cookies with Nana, But
unless they're you and me. Let's be honest here, John. It's you and I would put Jingle All the Way on. And we'd also put like Elves. That one would be on.
Oh, I'll be watching that one, I think, this weekend.
Oh, yeah, you could be watching that one.
Nazi Elves, very Christmassy.
Yeah, I think last year I did a whole like, a bunch of Christmas horror movies that I was watching back to back. Got to find some good ones. But yeah, I don't get why Elf became a standout, where, as you said, John, like there are other ones that have come after it that have tried to do it. The only thing that I can think of is just the vision of Jon Favreau and the combination of his direction coupled with a very unknown Will Ferrell at the time. Like, I think people have to understand, like 2003, he was still known as the Roxbury guy.
Yeah.
He was still known for SNL. He was still known as playing George W. Bush. He was not the mega star that he is now. He wasn't Ron Burgundy. He wasn't, he had just barely been the, Frank the Tank in Old School, So, I mean, this is Will Ferrell transitioning to that superstardom, in my opinion.
And he's an interesting choice for me, and not because like I don't think that he didn't have the chops, because clearly he did. But if you think the way an executive does, you got to be like, wait, this guy is known for like screaming all of his comedy bits on Saturday Night Live. Yeah, and he was Frank the Tank, and he's in a lot of these bra-centric comedies. You cast him in this wholesome movie with, like, I would say just a sprinkle of edge, like, but mostly a wholesome family movie that, is silly and fun and about family. Like, he seems like an odd person to throw in that role. He knocks it out the park, but just I'm surprised that there wasn't more backlash to his casting once he's cast, because there were many people before him that they had considered.
That's a good point. There were quite a bit of actors before him. Just in doing some research for this episode, you had Chris Farley and Jim Carrey were rumored to be in this at one point, because this movie had been in development for a bit of time. We tend to think like, a movie becomes in development, it's real easy. And honestly, with the exception of, say, movies that have a property associated with them, a lot of movies take time, a lot of time, and even to some degree, decades to get made. And Elf was no different. So I think, they landed Favreau, and they, tried to bring on, Chris Farley and some of those, and it didn't work. And bringing in a producer who also believed in it did help. And that's where they kind of discovered Will Ferrell. I also think that the success of Old School did help to propel this. What do you think?
Oh yeah, because you're right. That's where it was clear that he was gonna be a movie star. It wasn't, and not that there should be, but I do think that there's a little bit of like shame of if you go from Saturday Night Live to other TV, which is stupid because you're a success in your field. But like the idea is, if you follow the original cast of Saturday Night Live, like you use that as a launching pad for a movie career. And I feel like after Old School, it was clear that Will Ferrell wasn't going to be, this Thursday on NBC. He was a star in the making.
Yeah, I mean, I think that time period too, early 2000s, like the people who were trying to transition off of SNL were kind of falling flat on their face, if you think about it.
Chris
like
Kattan,
you had,
yeah.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say Chris Kattan
Molly
tried.
Shannon. Yeah.
Molly Shannon tried it with Superstar, and you had the Ladies' Man.
Oh, Tim Meadows. Yeah,
Tim Meadows. Yeah. So I mean, you had a lot of these the superstar cast of the late 90s trying to make that jump, and I think like Will Ferrell was always kind of the goofy side piece to a lot of these characters. So it really wasn't until Old School that he kind of stood out. And of course that led to being cast in Elf. Which, by the way, Old School has to be one movie we eventually do, because it cracks me up to this day.
I find it a hint obnoxious, but I'll be interested to re-examine
I would,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, studios got the director they wanted, they got the actor that they needed, and Favreau's take on this is interesting. So Favreau actually had, believe it or not, he had rules that he wanted to follow for this movie to be made. He actually had 3 rules. And the 3 rules were that, 1, no CGI had to be in this movie, which for 2003 is crazy.
With the Matrix sequels?
Because,
yeah.
Well, I was going to say that. Like, that's the thing is 2003. That is the year the Matrix sequels came out, where they were pushing the whole PlayStation to, graphics with trying to recreate Neo and Smith for that fight scene. Like, yeah, I know it's really bad when you watch it. But what's interesting is that, not unlike Francis Ford Coppola creating Dracula in 92, little over 10 years later, you've got Jon Favreau saying, I want us to do practical. I want us to do things in camera. And his approach to it, I think, is part of the success of this film. I think if they had gone with something that was more traditional CGI type deal, that it really wouldn't work as well as we'd like. And it would feel dated. Like, think about like the Scorpion King and the Mummy 2, where, the CGI looks plastic and gross.
Well, even look at other Christmas movies that came out after that, like 2 that should have been, bona fide classics, the Polar Express and the Jim Carrey, Night Before, what?
No, we did the Grinch.
Yeah. Well, no, but he also did a Robert Zemeckis version of the Ebenezer Scrooge tale.
Oh, yeah.
And like both of those are derided because the special effects don't hold up and they're creepy as fuck.
They really are creepy as fuck. Like they look like plastic dolls. Yeah. And it really hits that uncanny valley. And honestly, like, I always felt that they got the eyes wrong on those CGI characters. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Well, eyes are the window to the soul, right? So you got to get those right more than anything. Like, I'll forgive a chin. I don't care. But like, if the eyes,
a chin.
If the eyes are just pure evil, then I'm like, no, I'm out. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You got to have the eyes down. Correct.
But it's funny you should mention that, Brian, because because I think these movies, this movie, is very much a, Will Ferrell said he would never come back for an Elf 2. He didn't want to bastardize it, so because they wanted to make a sequel. But this,
what? They don't want money? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. But this movie very much is like an homage to Rankin and Bass.
That was his second rule. That was Favreau's second rule, is that it had to have that vibe of a Rankin Bass film. And there's a little bit of controversy about that later on I want to get into. Yeah. But the third thing was, this had to have the vibe of a Christmas classic. So along with that, it had to have that. And it accomplishes all 3 of those things. Even like I was rewatching it, watched it, part of it last night, and then again this morning I finished the other half of it. And it really does hit the notes of what I think is really the crux of the story, which is finding your place in the world.
Yeah.
Like, if I had to boil down Elf and say, this is what this movie's about, right? This movie is about something that we all have to deal with, which is finding our place in the world and rediscovering our roots. That's it. And if you took the Christmas element out of it, I think it would still work, but I think the Christmas element is what makes this movie a classic, because there's a lot of movies that are like that.
I just want to go back a little bit to the first rule of no CGI and talk a little bit about forced perspective, because
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to wait till later, but we can talk about it now.
Yeah. For people who don't know, there are ways to set up people at different lengths in a shot. And then, but maybe somebody's also on a platform, or, there are ways to trick an audience. It's like doing magic through film. And that's why, Will Ferrell seems like 6 times bigger than Bob Newhart. And yeah, I know, like, Will Ferrell's like 6'2" and Bob Newhart's probably 5'7", but he's still like 5 times bigger than him. And they didn't do that with CGI. It's all forced perspective trickery. And if you listeners have never seen this before, I would go online after you listen to the show, because you got to listen to it all the way through. Don't mess with our algorithm. But But just go to YouTube and type in like Elf Force Perspective or Lord of the Rings Force Perspective, because you're gonna go, what the fuck, when you see how they did some of this stuff.
No, it's crazy. So I saw one behind the scenes thing where to get the appearance that Buddy was sitting on Bob Newhart, what they did, and this is brilliant, and it just shows you the ingenuity when you don't have all the tools at your disposal, right? So what they did was they had Bob Newhart sit about, I'd say, a good 10 to 12 feet away from where Will Ferrell was sitting on I think it was a child actor that they brought in to get the legs. And they had the child actor like on like a diving board platform that they brought in. So the child actor's on the diving board platform and Will Ferrell's like sitting on the legs. And because of the fact that Bob Newhart is 10 feet away and they're using a lens that compresses the image, it looks exactly like he's really sitting on Bob Newhart. And there's all sorts of that trickery. Now, this stuff isn't easy. And that's the thing too, because you really can't fix it in post.
Yeah.
Because it's designed to be done in camera. So to commit to that for the entirety of the film and say, this is what we're doing for these effect shots is a risky endeavor, given that 2003 was the year of the Matrix sequels and the year of the CGI blowing up. So it takes a lot of balls to be a director like Favreau, who, keep in mind, this is not Jon Favreau, director of Iron Man. This is not Jon Favreau, the executive producer of The Mandalorian. This is Jon Favreau, maybe a couple years removed from
making movies with Vince Vaughn.
Yes, I was gonna say, Swingers, and what was the one we did? Very Bad Things.
Yeah, he was in there.
So this is just a couple years removed from that, where he is still known as an actor and just barely a director. So he doesn't have the clout that he has now.
Yeah, he's not Happy
important
Hogan
to keep
yet.
in mind. No, he's not Happy Hogan yet. So to be ballsy enough to say, like, I'm gonna make this movie with no CGI. I'm going to use this old ass technique that is going to be more cost prohibitive and, take more time. And don't worry, it's going to be great. That takes a lot of balls to do that. And it played off. Now the Rankin Bass visuals, do you want to talk a bit about that?
I'm assuming that it was a lot of stop motion and classic animation inserted. I don't know the intricacies of that. And Brian, you're the special effects guru. Can you hit us with that?
Well,
that sweet spot?
I was just saying more or less the feel of the Rankin Bass. Like, it's not even just the stop motion puppetry, which I love the stop motion puppetry in this. Like when Buddy is leaving and he's getting on the what the hell is it? The ice shelf thing that's floating off. And you've got the little penguin and the narwhal that pops up and says, "See you, buddy. Hope you find your dad."
Thanks,
like
Mr.
that
Narwhal.
stuff. Thanks, Mr. Narwhal. Like, that stuff is just so funny. And I think it's the fact that this parody, if you will, because obviously, like, it bounces between homage and parody at times with this. But that homage and parody with Rankin Bass is a great selling point. Now, the thing with Rankin Bass, and why I bring this up, is that there actually was a potential of a lawsuit
I'm not
midway
surprised.
through filming that almost happened, where the shoot was almost shut down. So this is actually from, bring it up here. So this is a quote from the holiday movies that made us. So if you have Netflix and you ever want to like see the behind the scenes, it's a good show. If you ever want to see the behind the scenes of like your favorite movies, this is a good like documentary series. It's a little light on details compared to like other serious documentaries. It kind of does that balancing act between like entertainment and documentary, but it's a good show.
It's very zippy, zany editing.
Yes. Yeah, and there are times when it's kind of annoying. Like where they cut somebody off and then they repurpose the line from somebody and they're like, oh, let's talk about it again.
Yeah.
It's like, he almost had like a bad case of problems. It's like that you mentioned that before in the interview. So anyway, this is a line from it. This is quote, "We got in trouble with clearance," production designer Rusty Smith recounted. "They got nervous that we had stolen too much from Rankin Bass, and all of a sudden we had lawyers in our midst. Lawyers with you on the set. Lawyers with you in the art department. Lawyers saying like, where's your reference? Where'd you get this idea? Where'd this come from? The producer came to me and said the film might not be releasable."
Which
Crazy.
I mean, like, I can understand to a degree. I mean, Rankin and Bass could also just, chill. But if I made a movie and I grew up loving Star Wars, and in my movie, I wanted to have, just because I wanted to have that feel, I had lightsabers and a ship that looked like the Millennium Falcon and a giant, bear monkey dog that growled and carried a crossbow. It'd be like, not George Lucas, but Disney's going to sue my ass.
Yeah.
For copyright infringement.
They will.
Yeah.
They will. You're not wrong. I think it's hard because Rankin and Bass animations, like they've almost transcended their own property. You know what I mean? Like, because they're such a cultural icon, like we go back to those, I remember watching the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, cartoons as a kid, and, seeing all these stop motion animations with like, even, what's the one with, I think it's not Santa Claus is Coming to Town, but it's the one with Heat Miser and the cold guy.
There's his origin story of Santa, and there's one with the Heat Miser.
Yeah. Like I love that one. That's my personal favorite. Not just because like Mr. Freeze referenced it in Batman and Robin, but it's just as funny. But like, because those cartoons are so emblematic of the holiday season, because there's such an attachment to them, and also because they transcend generations, like those cartoons came out in the 50s, all right? Like late 50s. So I can understand why Favreau would want to pull a lot from it, because I do think that this movie, even though a lot of that imagery you could point to and go like, oh yeah, that's totally Rankin and Bass, I'm not seeing whole characters from that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're definitely seeing the style there. I'd say the only thing that I would say is kind of about that is the costumes, and I think that was something that did come up, was the costumes of Will Ferrell's costume literally looks like a carbon copy of the elves.
Brian, the fucking snowman. It reminds me of the year of the great winter storm. What's that? You don't remember? I mean, it's the same snowman that introduces Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and narrates the whole thing. And he seems as drunk in this one as he did in the Rudolph special. And I know, John, a clay figure that stop motion can't be drunk. No, that snowman was drunk. They'd cut back to him.
That snowman was totally drunk.
Santa, I'll tell you right. Red-nosed son of a bitch, sound crazy.
Well, Santa kind of did call him out and said, like, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He hasn't been anywhere.
Yeah, he doesn't have feet. Yeah,
he doesn't have feet. Oh, but I can see where the concern was, but I also think that there is enough difference that they kind of can get away with it. I think there's enough.
I think, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
There you go.
And it's not that Rankin and Bass wasn't making anything anymore. And it's not that people were going to go, wow, now that this elf is out, I'm never buying a copy of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer ever again. That's not going to be.
If anything, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to make people want to watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer again.
It's like people It's like people that critique things on like YouTube, like, for the longest time you would get copyright strikes, for in the early 2000s up to the mid, even 2010s. But I think they kind of like, there was somebody smart enough in these boardrooms of like Warner Brothers and Paramount and whoever went, guys, this is just free advertising. Why would we shut them down? This is just added promotion that we don't have to pay for. And not that you don't get copyright strikes for certain things, but you really don't see it anymore. In fact,
we've gotten them. We've gotten them a couple times.
I've gotten them on YouTube, but weirdly, the ones that I get the least amount of trouble from is Disney, which is completely 180 from how it used to be. You know, an elementary school would show The Lion King to like third graders, and Disney would be like, "Where's our money, bitch?" You know. But
well, what I find funny is that the one copyright strike that we got that I could not actually deal with, like I couldn't like resolve it, was, believe it or not, from My Bloody Valentine. Yeah.
Oh, is that Scream Factory? Or are they the ones that released
No,
that?
I think it was, I forget who's the studio that owns it. I think it might be Paramount, but for whatever reason, you know, we put a short up, and this is, again, I know it's kind of derailing from our conversation about Elf, but we put a short up about the movie My Bloody Valentine, and it was a funny short, and we were honestly kind of just reviewing a scene.
Yeah.
And I put it up as a short, and this clearly was before they changed their policy on shorts. But yeah, we got a copyright strike because we showed imagery from it, even though none of the audio was there. Yeah. Because we were talking over it. But that, even though I'm like, this is a review, this is kind of, you know, fair use, they didn't care.
So you want to hear? I swear, audience, we'll get away from copyright strikes in a second, but Brian, I think you'll find this funny. So,
okay.
Recently, a wrestler, but it doesn't matter if our audience doesn't know who he is because I'm going to explain. CM Punk came back.
Yeah.
And there were all these like wrestling YouTube channels that were doing live watch-alongs. And so it's like you watch them. So the camera's on them. You don't really hear the audio. So there's nothing that like WWE can copyright strike. So you like, it's kind of like having a director's commentary, but with like a live wrestling show. And when he came back, a lot of these live shows like freaked out and they lost their minds. Like, I can't believe it. CM Punk is back, to the point where the next Monday Night Raw they ran, WWE, without asking permission, showed a lot of these YouTube channels reactions on the show, to the point where then the YouTube channels said, "Hey, look, WWE put us on Monday Night Raw yesterday," and WWE flagged them for copyright.
Wow.
I'm like,
that. So WWE flagged
footage that they stole.
The YouTubers they stole.
Yeah. For saying, "Hey, look, we're on Raw." Yeah.
That's some weird like mirror level shit there. Like, just like, oh, well, they stole our thing, but I posted that they stole our thing, and well, you shouldn't have posted that you stole our thing, so I'm gonna now I've gone cross-eyed.
Wow. Brian, if I
mean,
stole like a TV from your house, and then you came into my house without me being here and took it back, and I called the police on you for stealing my TV.
How dare you steal the TV that
I stole from you?
That I stole from you yesterday. Oh shit! I mean, that's very on brand for WWE, right?
Yeah.
Like, they kind of have always had that image of, you know, being the bad guy. But getting back to Elf.
Yeah.
So one of the things that is unusual for this film, and it's become something that's kind of stuck out for it, is the humor in it, especially the humor in one section of the film, which is the New York scene where Buddy comes out of the Lincoln Tunnel. Now, did you know, John, that all of that was improvised?
I did find that out. Yeah. It's it was, yeah, they just had call it a run and gun kind of thing.
Oh yeah, they ran,
you know.
they did a run and gun on it, and like the reactions that people are having to Buddy are completely legitimate. They're not extras, and there's something to be said for that, because I've seen that in other films. Like Borat is the one that comes to mind of kind of playing off of the real reactions you get from everyday people. Now I got a question for you, John. Do you think that Will Ferrell could pull that off today?
God no. I mean, if like they purposely picked, minorities. Like if they went to Chinatown and he was trying to do the bit with like an 80-year-old like Asian woman, then maybe. But the second he runs into some guy our age, like old school, bro, you're my boy Blue, and it's like, I mean, they mentioned they mentioned that in the Borat sequel, like in a narrative sense, like I become so famous as reporters, I had to hide my identity, So it would be the same thing now, where they couldn't just, okay, let's grab one guy with a camera, one guy with a boom. Will, you go and improvise, and the production assistant, make sure you're ready for people to sign waivers.
Yeah. I mean, clearly they probably got waivers after the fact because he'd have to, but that, like the scene where he's eating the gum off the railing. I mean, it makes me like, oh God, don't do that.
I mean, I'm sure that Will had chewed the gum and placed it, but still, he's still eating it off that pole.
Yeah.
Which, even if it's gum that you had chewed in the first place, that's still nasty.
Very nasty. But yeah, like the comedy in this is great, and the comedy is it's not insanely raunchy. Like that's the thing I think too is, and you mentioned before Office Christmas Party and what was the one that
the night before with Seth
the
Rogen.
Night Before.
Yeah.
So like part of the reason why I think that those movies haven't risen to the level of a Christmas classic is because they're too raunchy. Because they're too cynical.
Which there's a room for that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a room for that. But I mean, like, but they're not one that you're going to put on every year. Right? And I think this even goes back to like Scrooged, when we talked about Scrooge. I think it was last year we talked about Scrooge. But even that one, I think you mentioned that it's kind of a mean Christmas movie, and like people like me, I love it, but I know that it's not one that I think everybody loves.
Well, I think my issue with that is that like I feel like the filmmakers are mean spirited. Like Bad Santa's a mean movie as well, and I don't have a problem with that. But it just seemed like the filmmakers for Scrooge like actively dislike their audience, and it's like, why are you even making a movie if you despise the people you're making it for? But nevertheless,
but I do think that this movie has the right level of adult comedy in it, to the point where it's not, it's something that like it's a very weird balance that a film like this has to strike, where they're giving a little bit to the adult who's watching it, while at the same time delivering the laughs to children.
It reminds. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
It reminds me very much of like the Muppets and also like Animaniacs, and like I for one watch Wacko's Wish, which is like I think the last of the original run of Animaniacs every Christmas, and it's for the kids, but there is just enough adult content in there to make it still watchable. And that, the Muppets, I think, was always intended for a child audience, but adults love the Muppets all the same, Yeah. And I think this film balances that very well, of like the sweet and childish humor and the saccharine stuff with just that right pinch of, okay, I'm okay watching this at 30.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It doesn't feel too saccharine. Like even when I was watching it today before the episode, it doesn't feel too saccharine. My favorite scene of the adultish comedy is it's two scenes. One, it's when Buddy is excited for Santa to show up, and instead you get not a drunken version of Santa, but clearly not Santa. He says, "You sit on a throne of lies."
Pre-Voldemort Artie Lang.
Pre-Voldemort. Oh God. Because his nose fell off. Yeah.
It collapsed.
It collapsed.
Yeah.
It collapsed. But yes, Artie Lang with his nose. And he says, "You sit on a throne of lies." I'm just like, I still bust out laughing during that scene. And then of course the Miles Finch sequence where he's literally calling Peter Dinklage, who was not a household name at the time, an elf.
Yeah.
And that one's just like, oh man. And it's played for laughs, and I at the same time going like, might this be a little too much? But again, it's adding that little bit of edge, but being able to pull it back a bit.
Well, this is what's surprising to me about Peter Dinklage. Like, he recently came out like about the original Snow White because they're remaking, Snow White, doing that live adaptation of the cartoon shtick they like so very much, and
It's called making money.
Making
Like they just want to
money.
make all that money.
Yeah, that sweet cheddar bones or whatever nomenclature you want to use. But he had said that it was a grand insult to little people everywhere, the dwarves in the original. And I want to think, okay. First off, there are two things, Peter. A fantasy dwarf is a fictional character. It's not the same thing as a little person. Secondly, you did Elf.
Yes, he did.
Where you mocked your people for a paycheck. So maybe get off your high horse for a little bit and also realize that a dwarf in the Snow White sense is not a human being. It's a fictionalized fairy tale character. But anywho, I love Peter Dinklage, but
I love Peter Dinklage too. Here's the thing. I can see his point, and mainly because like I can't speak to his experience growing up. I can't speak to what he'd had to go through. So obviously, he might have had to deal with bullying. He might have had to deal with insults. He might have had to deal to losing parts because of the fact that he is a little person. So, I mean, I understand where he might come off like that. But at the same time, he also did Tiptoes. He was in Tiptoes.
Yeah.
He was in that movie.
And once again, if you don't know what we're
by
talking
and
about,
large, is an insult to little people.
YouTube the trailer for Tiptoes after we're done. Yeah.
we did a whole episode on it.
Check the archives.
That's an early one there.
Yeah.
Tiptoes, an early one. Yeah, that movie's so bad.
It's so great.
It's not. No, it's not. You say it is. You say a lot of movies are great, John. They're not.
Oh, I've got my copy of Tiptoes right on my bad movie
Of
shelf.
course you do. Of course you do. Oh, you're probably the only one who has a copy of Tiptoes.
Gary Oldman's mom. Yeah. The two of us.
Jeez. Yeah, jeez. So let's talk a little bit about the characters. Let's talk a bit about these. So, we talked a little bit about Buddy already, but he comes off as pure whimsy in human form. Like, if you had to say who Buddy is, that's who he is. He's pure whimsy in human form. He's naive to everything in the world aside from elf culture.
He's the fish out of water. The classic, throwing a guy who's only ever known elf culture into the mean streets of New York City, and he doesn't know how to act or behave, and comedy ensues. But
Comedy ensues.
I think that the casting of this movie is perfect, except for one.
Oh, I was hoping we'd wait for this one, but we can dive into this. So I said at the top of the episode that while Elf is a perfect modern Christmas classic, it's not a perfect movie. And one of the problems I have with this perfect Christmas classic, is Zooey Deschanel and her character. I don't have a problem with the actor. I don't have a problem with Zooey Deschanel at all. I think you have more of a problem with Zooey Deschanel.
I call her Bones Jr. because her sister's Bones.
You prefer the elder Deschanel?
Oh, well, she can act. Yeah, no, Zooey Deschanel can't act. And that little, bug-eyed, like, weirdo creep, I don't know how she gets in movies. I've never once believed a single performance she's done. And this performance, I'm like, what producer owed the Deschanel family a favor that they watched the dailies and went, we don't need to Eric Stoltz this immediately?
I mean, I always confuse her and Kat Dennings because they have the same voice.
All you have to do is just lower your gaze down a little bit, Brian. And you'll
I
know.
know.
How to separate
I know. Yes, I know. That's how you gross,
them.
but not wrong.
I remember seeing The 40-Year-Old Virgin was the first time I saw Kat Dennings, and my buddy Blaze and I were at the movie, and just her like yelling at her mom, and just like, which was causing a certain level of jiggling. I'll leave it there. But my buddy Blaze going, "God damn, look at those titties! Look at those fucking titties! Look at the titties on her!" And I'm like, dude, we're in a movie theater. You gotta calm down. Put the popcorn over that thing. You put an eye out. You know.
I love that we were family friendly up until right now. So 45 minutes into the episode, we still have family friendly audience. Sorry.
You know what? Grandma and the kids are making cookies, and Grandma, he said what?
He said titties. But here's the problem I have with her character. One, she does do that whole like monotone like thing that she does that she calls acting.
Hey, you. Come here. What are you doing in the girls' locker room this morning? Duh.
Yeah, that's about it. And I don't buy their relationship in the least bit. One, she's like 23 at the time, and Will Ferrell is, I think, at the time of the. No, I don't think he was 57. I think he was like 36. So he's a 36 and 23. They don't match.
He also seems
all.
mentally disturbed. Like, we know he's not, but like he seems like a deranged maniac. Like, I hid in the store overnight to redecorate. I wear this outfit wherever I go. I'm obsessed with Christmas. I don't seem to understand how the world works. I have the emotional maturity of an 8-year-old on a sugar binge. Do you want to have sex with me? And she's like, yeah, sure. Yeah. So
I mean, I don't go that far, John. My thoughts are just that, you know, he's only been there for like 3 days over the course of the movie. Like, it's 3 days for the most part in New York. And by the end of it, after 1 day, he's just got her.
you know what? I follow what I call Empire Strikes Back time rules.
Ah, yes.
Like,
okay.
if you really think about it, Luke was on Dagobah for like 7 hours. But if he's really there, as long as you need him to be there in your own mind. So it's
That's a very convenient way of compressing time.
so it's like, as long as you need Jovi and Will Ferrell to have worked together, or Buddy and Jovi to work together, in your own mind, just say that they've been working together for 4 weeks, which is not the case.
No,
it's been like 72 hours, but
it's 72 hours. And like at the beginning of the movie, it says there's 2 weeks left till Christmas. And how long does it take him to walk from the North Pole to New York? So I'm sorry, Empire Strikes Back rules don't work here, because by the time he gets to New York, there's probably only 3 days left till Christmas. Just saying. But I just have a problem with the fact that she doesn't really add anything other than just to serve as the romantic interest. And, you know, her character is that she's just cynical. She doesn't like the holidays, and that, you know, Buddy just makes her like the holidays. And that's why they, you know, end up in a relationship. I know that it's one-dimensional, and I'm overthinking a movie like Elf. One, that's my job. Two, with a movie that has so much going for it, that is a weak point.
Well, and let's be honest, Brian, as well, that she's there to give Buddy a case of the not gays.
You say that like every episode with a lot of characters.
I think that Hollywood wants to make sure that they know that their straight audience knows that their hero is straight, because, ooh, butt stuff, you know? We can't take little Cooper and little Hayden to see Elf if there's a chance that he might like butt stuff.
Yeah, Hollywood is homophobic, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's changing slowly.
It is slowly
Molasses-ly
changing.
slowly, but yeah, it's changing a little bit. You know, it's like X-Men, or Marvel says one of the X-Men's now gay. Who is it? Cyclops, Wolverine? No. It's a character that only appeared like one time 30 years ago that you don't remember. Yeah, he's gay now. So look how progressive we are.
See?
Yeah.
We're progressive. So Jovi, kind of weak link. Walter Hobbs, played by the great James Caan.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
You
Seriously.
motherfucker, you died on my birthday, but I'm not going to hold it against you.
I mean, yeah, sorry. But seriously, one of the best actors in the 20th century with roles in The Godfather. Knocks it out of the park in this one in a way that I don't think he expected that he could. Because, Walter's supposed to be kind of the aloof father who's obsessed with, work. And he doesn't take any time for his family. And wants nothing to do with this goofball in an elf costume.
Yeah. He's very much the straight man who's like, what the fuck is this about? Who is this guy? What is going on with my life? This is madness. He thinks he's an elf. And I do love that Mary Steenburgen, because she just has to be the other voice in the movie, goes, "No, just give him a chance. Let him live with us. Take him to work."
That's her character, though.
Yeah.
Every movie that I've ever seen Mary Steenburgen in, like, you ever see the movie Clifford?
Yeah.
Okay, so she plays the same character in Clifford. Why don't you just give your nephew a chance? Because in that one, Charles Grodin has to take Martin Short, who plays a child.
What an obscure reference, Brian.
I love that movie. That's why. Deep down, it's a guilty pleasure. But like Mary Steenburgen's in that movie too, and she always plays kind of you're just too much of a grumpy person. Why don't you just be more loving? So that's her character. She's got a mark on it. Even in Back to the Future Part 3, she kind of had a little bit of that to her. I think that's just her.
Oh, she was so annoying in that movie. But anyways, we're not here to talk
why
about
didn't you go over
today.
Clayton Ravine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean Eastwood Ravine?
Eastwood Ravine. Yes. Yeah. But I guess, John, kind of in closing on this episode, why do you think that this movie has managed to be as relevant, become kind of that Christmas classic 20
years.
20 years later?
What? Wait, how was I 5 years old in the 12th or the 11th grade? Yeah. I think it's because it's sincere,
Okay.
without being obnoxious about it. I think that they set out, and it seems rare anymore, to just make a good movie. And I'm sure there was writing on the walls of 100 different ways by algorithms that this movie could fail, but they still gave it a chance to stand on its own 2 feet. And it did successfully. And I think because it wasn't to sell Pepsi or Krispy Kremes, and it still hit its target audience of mostly young people, but was still smart enough to appeal to the older people. And just the lightning in the bottle of catching Will Ferrell right at the right time. I think because there's a sincerity to the whole operation that helped this movie stand on its feet over 20 years later.
Good answer. Very good answer. No, I am in a complete agreement. I think this movie does the work of movies, Christmas classics that we always go back to. There's a reason why the Santa Claus is so beloved, ever since it came out in the 90s. There's a reason why we watch the marathon of A Christmas Story every year. There's a reason, there's a reason why, assholes like me watch Scrooged. These movies have a way of, I think really it's they fill up that vessel inside of us when we were like, we don't really have any like Christmas, call it what it is, Christmas spirit. We want to feel that around this time of the year. And Elf does the work of doing that, but doing it in a way where you're laughing at the same time. It doesn't feel like you're watching a Lifetime movie. It doesn't feel like you're watching something that's preachy. There's nothing in this movie that like preaches like kind of like the last movie we watched last week, that you have to celebrate Christmas a certain way or that you're not doing it right. You know, this movie is all about just being kind, acknowledging your family, finding your place in the world. That sort of thing is universal. And Elf does it in spades. And I really think the visuals that Favreau puts through does it. I think his commitment to making a movie that was reminiscent of Rankin Bass also helps with it. But I really think that combination of Favreau and Will Ferrell is really the magic behind it. You know?
Favreau hits home runs.
He does. I won't hold Cowboys and Aliens against him.
Or Iron Man 3. Or 2.
Or he did 2. He did 2. I don't think he did 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Iron Man 3, that was who the hell was it? This guy who wrote Predator.
Okay. Yeah.
He did you know which one I'm talking about.
Shane Black?
Yeah, Shane Black.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I just think that those pieces are what make this a classic. And I think it's hard to kind of replicate that. And that's why it's been so hard to kind of get a Christmas classic like this 20 years after the fact. I can't think of any off the top of my head that I'm like, oh yes, that is a Christmas classic of the 2010s or the 2020s. There really aren't any in there.
I would say this: if you're going by horror, better watch out.
Oh yeah,
Better Watch Out. It's a good one.
Oh yeah, no, Better Watch Out. I never said anything about horror.
Yeah, we're talking about
Better Watch Out
classics,
is great.
Yeah.
Krampus is great.
Krampus
too.
is great too. Yeah.
Krampus is great too. There's a lot in the horror genre that's for people like John and I.
Yeah.
Honestly, like we'll watch Elf with like, you know, family for the general audience, but then after everyone goes to sleep, we're watching
Christmas Evil.
And Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Good talk,
Yeah.
John. Good talk. Where can they find you at on the internets?
Let's see. You can find me over at Facebook, Instagram, and the X, formerly known as Twitter. So feel free to reach out to me on any of those. We can have a discussion. And you can find me at YouTube. Jay does Video Nasties, and just in time for the holiday spirit, I have a discussion with a doctorate of film history about the discussion of white flight and how it changed paranormal horror movies forever. You know, very Christmassy.
That is very Christmassy.
Yeah.
That is very Christmassy indeed. Racism. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Well, I mean, Santa Claus is a Turkish saint who is white as snow. Thanks to the Coca-Cola
apparently
company,
he's a
so.
Turkish saint who kicks ass for the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. Saint Nick kicks ass because he beats up people that don't believe. Yeah.
Yeah. We're still a little jaded by last week's episode, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
You can find me at Brian Coddington on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck it's called. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Psycho Show. You can also find us on the TikToks at Cinema Psycho Show. Cinema Psycho Show is what the TikTok name is. We also have our Discord channel. Be sure to click the link in the description for that. And of course, we are now doing some YouTube things. So if you haven't already done so, click the subscribe and notification bell and the like on this video. Share it with your buddies and your friends. And in that case, too, we are also on multiple podcast platforms. Just go ahead and search for Cinema Psycho Show or click on cinemapsychoshow.com/follow, and we will see you next time.
Are my chestnuts roasting on an open fire, or is it gonorrhea?
I think it's gonorrhea.
Uh-oh. The gift that keeps on giving.